Did my best friend kiss my boyfriend? I thought these two were the most reliable people in my life. But one day it all turned out to be an illusion. My boyfriend and I have been together since we were 17, and over the past 7 years, we've grown from awkward teenagers into adults building a life together. When we first met in high school, it felt like one of those once-in-a-lifetime connections. We clicked immediately, and as we started dating, I knew I had someone special in my life. Our relationship wasn't just built on romance. It was rooted in friendship, trust, and mutual support. He was there for me during the chaos of college applications, late-night study sessions, and the uncertainty of growing up. When I got accepted to a university in another state, I was nervous about how the distance might affect us, but he didn't even hesitate. "I'll follow you wherever you go," he said, and he meant it. He moved states to be with me, even though it meant leaving his family and friends behind. He took on odd jobs to support himself while I focused on my studies, always making sure I had what I needed to succeed. I'll never forget how he stayed up with me during finals week, bringing me snacks and tea, and reminding me to take breaks. He believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. When I went on to pursue my master's degree, he was just as supportive. He never made me feel like my ambitions were a burden, and he encouraged me to chase my goals unapologetically. As our relationship grew, we started building a life together in more tangible ways. We bought a house, a modest but beautiful home that felt like ours from the moment we stepped inside. It was the first big decision we made as partners, and it symbolized the future we were planning together. He took on the financial responsibility of paying the mortgage entirely, even though I insisted on contributing. "You worked so hard for your degrees," he said. "Let me handle this part." I still covered my share of other expenses, but his willingness to take on such a big commitment spoke volumes about how much he cared for me and believed in our future. We also got a dog together, a goofy, lovable pup who became the center of our little family. We picked out furniture for the house, decorated it together, and even started talking about what we wanted our lives to look like in 5, 10, or 20 years. Kids, travel, careers, it all felt like it was falling into place. I've always been someone who values independence, and so is he. We've never been the type of couple who checks each other's phones or constantly questions where the other person is. I love having my own space and freedom, and I respect his need for the same. I never felt insecure about our relationship because he gave me no reason to doubt him. But trust isn't just about the person you're in a relationship with. It's about everyone you choose to keep close to your heart. For me, that included my best friend. We've known each other for more than 12 years. We met when we were just kids, and from the very beginning, it felt like we were meant to be in each other's lives. We went through everything together: sleepovers, birthday parties, our first crushes, and those awkward teenage years. She wasn't just a friend. She was family. Growing up, we were inseparable. We spent countless hours talking about our dreams, fears, and everything in between. When my parents fought, I'd call her and vent, and she always knew exactly what to say to make me feel better. When her first boyfriend broke her heart, I stayed up all night with her, passing tissues and plotting imaginary revenge. We were each other's safe space, no matter what was happening in the world around us. She's the kind of person who knows every detail of my life. The embarrassing moments, the personal victories, the things I've never shared with anyone else. She was there when I had my first kiss, when I graduated from college, and when I moved into the house I now share with my boyfriend. She was the first person I called when I got the job I'd been dreaming of, and she was the first person I texted when I adopted my dog. Her opinion has always mattered to me. If I had a big decision to make, I'd go to her for advice. She'd give me her honest thoughts, even if it wasn't what I wanted to hear. I trusted her completely, so much so that I introduced her to my boyfriend early on in our relationship. It made me happy to see them get along so well, and I love that the two most important people in my life could share a friendship of their own. Recently, her life took a chaotic turn. She fell into a whirlwind relationship with a guy she barely knew, moving in with him after only a few months. They got engaged shortly after that, eloped without telling anyone, and within a year, they were divorced. It all happened so fast that I barely had time to process it. I never even got to meet him in person, which still feels surreal. By the time I was able to catch up with her, it was already over. She told me that he had been controlling and emotionally abusive, isolating her from her friends and family. It broke my heart to hear what she had been through, and I blamed myself for not realizing how bad things had gotten for her. When everything fell apart, she came to stay at my house for a couple of nights. It felt like old times, sitting together and talking late into the night. I wanted to do everything I could to help her heal and remind her that she wasn't alone. I thought this was an opportunity for us to reconnect after all the distance that had grown between us during her marriage. That night felt like one of those rare, perfect evenings where everything just clicks. It was late fall, and the crisp weather made it ideal for sitting outside by the fire. My boyfriend, my best friend, and I were all together at our house, laughing and reminiscing about old times. We'd been drinking a little, not too much but enough to feel relaxed and open. I remember looking at the two of them, feeling a deep sense of gratitude that the two most important people in my life got along so well. It had been a long time since I'd seen my best friend. Her whirlwind relationship and divorce had kept her away, and I missed the days when we'd spend hours talking about everything and nothing. That evening felt like a step back into the friendship we used to have. I remember leaning over to my boyfriend at one point and saying, "I'm so glad she's here. I've missed her so much." He smiled and agreed, telling me it was nice to see me so happy. The three of us sat by the fire for hours, telling stories, joking, and just enjoying each other's company. My best friend and I talked about some of our old adventures, and my boyfriend chimed in with playful comments about how he couldn't believe some of the things we'd gotten away with when we were younger. Around 1 a.m., the chill in the air started to get to me. I told them I was heading inside to warm up for a bit, but that I'd be back soon. It wasn't unusual for me to leave them alone for a little while. I trusted both of them completely, and I'd always liked how well they got along. Once I got inside, I sat on the couch to pet our dog and check my phone. The house was quiet, the kind of peaceful quiet that makes you feel safe and content. I didn't realize how comfortable I'd gotten until I found myself dozing off. It wasn't intentional. I'd only meant to warm up for a few minutes, but the warmth of the couch and the gentle weight of my dog's head on my lap lulled me into a quick nap. I don't know how much time passed, but I woke up to the sound of the door opening. My boyfriend walked in, followed by my best friend. Both of them seemed completely normal. There was no awkwardness, no strange vibes, nothing to make me think that anything had happened. "We're heading to bed," my boyfriend said with a smile. "You coming?" I nodded sleepily, and we all said goodnight. My best friend left the next morning after breakfast, and we promised to stay in touch more often. There was no indication that anything was wrong. A few days after that seemingly perfect night, my boyfriend came to me holding his phone and said, "Hey, your friend just messaged me on Snapchat. She's asking when she can come over again." At first, I didn't think much of it. I glanced at the message, but something about it struck me as off. Why would she message him directly instead of me? If she wanted to make plans, why not text me? Her best friend of over a decade? I asked him, "Did she say why she messaged you and not me?" He shrugged. "No, but I thought it was weird too." His response was casual, as if it didn't bother him much. But it stuck with me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something about it wasn't right. I called my mom later that day to talk it through. I explained the situation and asked if I was overthinking it. "I don't want to make this a bigger deal than it is," I said. My mom paused before answering. "I think it's strange too," she admitted. "But maybe it's nothing. Why don't you just ask your friend? It might clear the air and put your mind at ease." But I didn't ask her. I didn't want to come across as paranoid or accusatory. At the time, I still trusted both my boyfriend and my best friend completely. I told myself I was overanalyzing the situation and decided to let it go. Even though I tried to dismiss it, the interaction nagged at me. It wasn't just the fact that she messaged him directly. It was the tone of the message. It felt overly casual, like she was trying to bypass me. And why was she asking to come over so soon after we just spent an entire evening together? I mentioned it to my boyfriend again a couple of days later, and he reassured me, "I don't think it's a big deal. She probably just wanted to make plans and figured I'd pass it along." I nodded, but the doubt lingered. Something about it just didn't sit right with me. A few weeks later, I decided to reach out to her myself. I texted her, suggesting we get together and catch up. At first, she seemed enthusiastic. "I'd love to," she replied. We talked about possible dates, but when the time came, she didn't follow through. She said something about her work schedule being hectic and promised we'd figure out another time. Again, I tried not to read too much into it. People get busy. It happens. But part of me couldn't ignore how different she seemed. This was someone I'd been inseparable from for years, someone who used to prioritize our friendship above everything. Now, she felt distant, like she was holding something back. Looking back, That Snapchat message was the first crack in the foundation of trust one had in both of them. At the time, I didn't know what it meant, but now I can't stop replaying it in my mind. She reached out to him because she wanted to see him again, and she was testing the waters to see if he'd be okay with it. 3 months passed after that night. Life continued as usual, or at least it seemed that way. My boyfriend and I settled back into our routines, and my best friend remained distant. I told myself it was just life getting in the way, that maybe she was still recovering from her whirlwind marriage and divorce. I tried not to take it personally. Then, out of the blue, she texted me last week. Her message was long, rambling, and full of apologies. At first, I couldn't make sense of it. My heart started racing as I read the words, my stomach twisting into knots. She confessed that the night she stayed over, she and my boyfriend had kissed while I was inside. She said it happened quickly, that it was a moment of weakness. According to her, my boyfriend broke it off immediately, telling her it was wrong and that they couldn't do this. She claimed he leaned in first, but also admitted she didn't pull away. Her tone was desperate. She said she felt horrible about what happened and was terrified of losing me as a friend. She insisted it was a mistake, that it meant nothing, and that it was fueled by the alcohol we'd all been drinking that night. She said they both agreed to keep it a secret, believing it would be better for everyone if I didn't know. I stared at my phone in disbelief, my hands shaking. My heart felt like it had stopped. This couldn't be real. My best friend and my boyfriend, the two people I trusted more than anyone else in the world, had kissed while I was just a few steps away, completely oblivious. I immediately confronted my boyfriend. I showed him the message and demanded an explanation. He looked panicked, like a deer caught in headlights. "She told you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, she told me." "So, what the hell happened?" He took a deep breath and sat down, his hands trembling. "Okay," he said. "Yes, we kissed, but it wasn't what you think." She leaned in first, and I stopped it as soon as I realized what was happening. It was a mistake, and I swear it didn't mean anything. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice breaking. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said. "It was a stupid, drunken mistake, and I didn't want it to ruin everything we have. I thought if I just ignored it, it would go away." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You didn't want to hurt me?" I repeated. "So instead, you lied to me for months and let me sit here thinking everything was fine while you kept this secret?" He hung his head, unable to meet my eyes. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know I should have told you, but I didn't know how." "Did it mean anything to you?" I asked. "No," he said firmly. "It didn't mean anything. It was just a moment of stupidity, and I stopped it before it could go any further. I love you, and I would never do anything to jeopardize what we have." His words should have comforted me, but they didn't. I felt numb. It didn't matter who leaned in first or who stopped it. What mattered was that it happened at all. What mattered was that they both chose to keep it from me, letting me live in ignorance while they carried the weight of their secret. I spent the next few days in a haze, barely able to function. I felt betrayed, embarrassed, and completely alone. These were the two people I would normally turn to in a situation like this, but now they were the source of my pain. I've tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just the alcohol. Maybe my friend was vulnerable and emotional after her divorce. Maybe my boyfriend was caught off guard and didn't know how to react. But none of that changes the fact that they crossed a line I never thought they would even approach. This wasn't just about the kiss. It was about the trust they shattered in that moment and in the months that followed. They both made the decision to hide it from me, to let me question myself and my instincts instead of coming clean. Now, I'm left wondering if I can ever move past this. Can I forgive them? Can I trust them again? Or has this broken something that can't be repaired? Update to the story. After confronting both my boyfriend and my ex-best friend, I took some time to process everything. I spent a few nights away at my mom's house, trying to figure out how to move forward. During that time, my boyfriend reached out repeatedly, apologizing and asking for another chance. He admitted that keeping the secret was a mistake, but insisted that the kiss meant nothing, and he was determined to prove his commitment to me. I decided to return home and have a final conversation with him. I told him that while I appreciated his honesty now, the betrayal of trust, both in the act itself and in hiding it for months, had deeply damaged our relationship. He promised to do whatever it takes to rebuild what we had, but I'm not sure if that's possible. As for my ex-best friend, I've cut her off completely. She's sent multiple messages, apologizing and asking for forgiveness, but I haven't responded. I don't think I can have her in my life after this. Right now, I'm focusing on myself. I've started therapy to work through the betrayal and to figure out what I truly want moving forward. While I haven't made any final decisions about my relationship, I know I deserve love and trust that doesn't come with conditions or lies. I'll update again if there's any progress, but for now, I'm taking things one step at a time.